So greetings from Pennsylvania once again on a blustery winter day. Today is December 22nd, I believe. Not too long till Christmas. But yeah, it's time for another French and Indian War video. And we are on the west side of the Susquehanna once again. We just did the Great Cove Massacre a little while ago. Now we're doing the forts on this side of the river, because I think we've done with most of the main forts on the east side of the river. But yeah, it's gonna be a little bit different over here on the west side. Yeah, so down here is the Juniata River. I believe we are currently in Snyder County, I believe, just south of Mifflintown, in another little town called Mexico, of all places. See some old bridge piers over there. And we're going to visit the location of two forts in this video. Fort Patterson, which is just up the street, and then Fort Granville. Fort Granville has an interesting history to it, a lot different than the forts that we explored over on the east side, which didn't really receive a whole lot of action, I guess you could say, where it's a little bit different, like so on this side of the river. But I'm going to throw up a map of where we are currently, or at least of where the location of fort was going to be. Or is, or was, I guess I should say. But yeah, on the east side of Susquehanna, you remember the Blue Mountain was like the boundary between the frontier. It was like the frontier point, you know. On the south side of Blue Mountain were the settlements, the farms and stuff. On the north side was like the wild country, Indian country. Now a few people had settled north of it, but it was like a clear delineation between, you know, it was like that clear mark of the frontier between like the settled areas and the wild areas. But here on the west side of Susquehanna, that delineation isn't so clear. The people that were settled out in this area, it was still all kind of wild. There wasn't like a clear demarcation line. Even today on the east side, the Blue Mountain is still kind of like a demarcation line, even in modern times. It's very different from on the south side the Blue Mountain is on the north side, different ways, culturally and economically and stuff like that. And like I said, because of that, the forts here on the west side of the Susquehanna River received a lot more action, I guess you could say. Both Fort Patterson and Fort Granville were actually attacked. And Fort Granville was actually burned to the ground. We'll tell that story. Whereas when we visited the forts on the east side, none of them were, I don't remember any of them actually being directly attacked by the Indians or the French. Alright, but yeah, I just want to give that introduction here down by the river, the Juniata River. I think this is the Buttonwood campground where I'm at right now. But we're going to drive up the street. On Landis Street is where I believe the marker is for Fort Patterson. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about things when we get up that spot, if we can find a quiet spot up there. Alright, yeah, Fort Patterson, actually named after a captain, Captain James Patterson, during the French and Indian War. So we indeed do have a monument here on Landis Street. This monument in the memory of Captain James Patterson, born in 1715, died 1772, the pioneer who built the first Patterson's Fort near this spot. There was another Patterson's Fort too after the war. Distinguished soldier in the service of Pennsylvania during the French and Indian Wars. And of Mary Stuart Patterson, his heroic wife, erected by its descendants. So somewhere in this area was Fort Patterson. Probably, who knows, probably where these houses were. Let's see what's on the other side here. Oh, nothing. There's another monument up further. We'll check that out too. Yeah, so this is another one of these forts where I don't think anybody really knows where exactly it was anymore. It's been destroyed by modern times. Here it could be back maybe closer to the river probably. And yeah, noisier here. But yeah, apparently he died, Patterson died in this fort, and he's buried nearby. I think there's a graveyard here somewhere in someone's backyard where he's buried, but I'm not sure exactly where that is. So I couldn't see it on Google Maps anywhere, but yeah. And this fort, it was surrounded at one point by enemy forces of French and Indian, and fired on, but it never surrendered, so it wasn't destroyed. But I read that it was a smaller fort, about 12 foot square, 8 logs high, which might not sound high, but I think the logs were a little bit bigger back then than what we think of today. And it had a slate roof to prevent it from being burned down, because a lot of times that's what the Native Americans would do. They'd shoot those fire arrows down. If you could lay it on the roof, they could burn the place down. But if it's a slate roof, you won't be able to burn it down. So yeah, like I said, it mentioned there was another Fort Patterson that was built after the war by his son William, and it gets confused with this one sometimes. Alright, it is indeed a chilly day. There's snow flurries coming down. Alright, let's go check out the monument up here quick. Alright, it's just a monument about the first settlements here in the Juniata Valley. I don't see anything French and Indian War related. It's from that time period, but you can pause the video and read that if you want. But we're gonna move on from this. On my way back to this monument, I realized there's another plaque on this side. We just read that one over there, but I was looking for one on this side. Anyway, let's read this one. In memory of their eldest son, Colonel William Patterson, the son of James Patterson, born in 1737, died in 1782, builder of the second Patterson's Fort near the spot, a brave soldier in the service of the Pennsylvania during the French and Indian Wars, a judge of the bench of Cumberland County, and an active patriot during the American Revolution. Yes, so both father and son were involved in the French and Indian War. Like I said, there were two Fort Pattersons, and it gets a little confusing at times when you're researching the history of it. Alright, but like I said, the spot is very different from what it would have been back then. Okay, don't really know where the fort exactly was either. Alright, like I said, we're going to move on. We're going to go up to Fort Granville, which has a much more interesting and bloody history to it, unfortunately. That fort was attacked, and it actually was defeated and burned to the ground, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Alright, so we're going to head up to Lewistown, a couple miles, well, more than a couple miles up from where we are. I'll go ahead and throw up a map of where I'm headed next. Alright, but just quickly, a side stop that I had not planned. Down there is the town of Mexico. I came across this sign here for Fort Bigham. The site of this stockade blockhouse is a few miles west in the Tuscarora Valley, built about 1754 to protect traders and settlers in this region. In 1756, it was destroyed by Indians. I had not found this one in my research yet, so we'll have to try and check that one out. Yes, that's not one that I remember reading about in my research. I know the one book that I have here, which I showed you in the past, has a map of some of the different forts here in Pennsylvania. Probably because it was not one of the officially commissioned forts, commissioned by the government of the colonial government in Pennsylvania. So it's one of the ones that's put up by the settlers. But we'll have to look into that one when I get home, see if we can find where it was located at least. But anyway, we'll have to do that for another time. So we're gonna head, like I said, we're gonna keep heading up towards Lewistown, and see if we can get to where Fort Granville was located. Once again, there's not gonna be anything left of this one. The area where it was is all built up now, lots of businesses and stuff. So it might be a bit noisy there, but we're gonna try and find a quieter spot once we get up there to talk about what happened at Fort Granville. Yeah, like Fort Bigham here was burned to the ground too, and that's the same thing happened to Fort Granville. So hopefully I'll see you up in Lewistown. All right, so here we are in Lewistown. This is a Business 22. And just down that way, State Street. This is the PennDOT facility here. And there's a marker here, one we were looking for. Fort Granville, erected in 1755-56 along the river just south. An important link in the chain of early frontier defenses. Destroyed July 30th, 1756 by French and Indians under Colonel Captain Coulon de Villiers. They have an older monument here too. About 650 yards south of this spot, on the high bank of the Juniata River, was the site of Fort Granville, which was erected in 1755. The fort was twice attacked by the Indians. It was destroyed on July 30th when in command of Lieutenant Edward Armstrong, who was killed in the battle with a large body of French and Indians. The entire garrison was either killed or carried into captivity. All right, so we are going to find a quieter spot to talk about what happened in a little bit more detail here at Fort Granville. I need to make a correction. Earlier, when we were at Fort Patterson, we were in Juniata County, not Snyder County. They're right next to each other. I got them a little bit confused there. So we were in Juniata County earlier. Now we're in Mifflin County here in Lewistown. And I'll go ahead and throw up a map of exactly where this location is, you know, on more of a street level. So I think just down the street is a Lowe's, or the hardware store, the lumber store. I think I want to try and get down to the river. I think we might be able to walk down to the river from there and get close to where this fort originally would have been located. Like it was destroyed by the French and Indians, but any remnants of it were also destroyed later in life. I think the Pennsylvania Canal ran along the Juniata River here, and I think that pretty much destroyed any remnants of it. But let's see if we can find a spot down by the river to talk about more what happened here at Fort Granville. Yes, we have definitely found a quieter spot. You see the Juniata River down there, so somewhere down close this way, probably more off to our left, was where the fort was located. A little muddy down here too. Yes, this was commanded by Lieutenant Armstrong, and he was the brother of General Armstrong, who was well known during the French and Indian War. We may have talked about him a little bit, but we'll probably talk about him more in future videos. A lot of things in Pennsylvania are named after him. When we were at Fort Halifax earlier this year, there's a creek there named after him. I think there's an Armstrong County out in western PA. So there ended up being repercussions for the French and Indians for killing General Armstrong's brother, as you can imagine. But we'll talk about that later in this video. You're almost down here by the river. Yeah, a lot quieter down here, actually. And so down here is the Juniata River. And a little bit up that ways is where the fort would have been located. But like I said, there's really nothing left of it. They built the Pennsylvania Canal along here at 1.2, destroyed pretty much what would have been left of it, which probably might not have been much to begin with. A lot of times these forts were not anything substantial, and after several hundred years, there's really not going to be anything left of them. But yeah, there's the Juniata River. Yeah, so this fort was attacked and surrounded several times. The first time both were within a few days of each other. The first attack was on July 22nd of 1756. They were not successful that time. I think under the fort was fired upon, but they couldn't take it because there's too many men in the fort at that time. But after they attacked the fort, they split up into a number of smaller parties and did what they do best, I guess you could say, is they attacked a lot of the settlers in the area. There was a family, the Baskins family. They murdered him, took his wife and children into captivity. There was another man, Hugh Carroll, I think his name was, same deal. His farm was burned down, his family taken captivity. But then a couple days later, I think it was July 30th, they attacked again. And this time, unfortunately, they were successful. A large detachment of men had left the fort to go somewhere else, so there's less men at the fort. And they were able to surround the fort, and a lot of times these forts, they try to start them on fire. That's why I mentioned like Fort Patterson earlier had a slate roof to protect it, but I'm not sure what the roof of this one was, but they got the side logs on fire. And the men were trapped inside the fort, and they had no water. I think they didn't have any water for several days, so they couldn't use water to put the fire out. And the fire burned a hole in the side of the fort, and the Indians were able to fire inside the fort on the people inside the actual stockade. And in doing so, they killed, that's how Lieutenant Armstrong died, and another man died in the fort as well as a result of that hole burning in the side of the fort. And it wasn't just the Indians that were attacking the fort at this time, there were some French there as well. And once they had burned that hole in the side and killed Armstrong and several others, or just one other man I think, they did demand surrender of the fort, or suggest that the fort surrender, now that it was looking pretty grim for them. And upon hearing those demands, a man named John Turner went and opened the gates to the fort. Not sure if the others wanted him to or not, or if he just did it on his own accord, but he opened the forts and basically said, we surrender. So I think there were 22 men in the fort, I believe, 3 women and some children. They were all taken captive. Yeah, and then the fort was burned down, I think by Chief Jacobs, his name was, burned the fort to the ground. And then they were taken in captivity out into western PA to a place named Kittanning, which later General Armstrong burned to the ground himself. But yeah, unfortunately, and I'm not sure quite why, but the guy that surrendered or opened the gates, John Turner, they killed him later. They brutally tortured him and then killed him later on. Not sure why. I'm not sure if it's because he's the one that surrendered. They thought he was weak because of that, but yeah, the guy that actually opened the gates to them, I try to keep things PG on this channel, but yeah, it was brutal. And then they finally killed him. That was probably a relief to him in the end. But yeah, then the others remained captive, probably for several years. But then, like I said, his brother, Lieutenant Armstrong, General Armstrong, I think on September 8th, 1756, he attacked one of the major Indian towns. Like I said, his name was Kittanning, and burned that to the ground. So yeah, what goes around comes around, I guess, in times of war. So yeah, here we are. It's roughly around the site of Fort Granville, the sad history. Like I say, a lot different than the forts that we talked about on the east side of Susquehanna. We never had forts captured and burned to the ground over there. So a little bit of a different side to things over here. Yeah, and it's a lot nicer and quieter down here than it is back up where the historical marker was located. So yeah, Fort Granville along the banks of the Juniata. Our first fort we've filmed that was actually captured and destroyed during the French and Indian War. Well, except for Fort Necessity way out in western PA. Yeah, Fort Necessity was a whole other ball game. When I'm talking about forts being captured and destroyed, I'm talking about the ones that were commissioned by the Pennsylvania colonial government to defend the frontier. Fort Necessity, that's the one built by George Washington. That's a whole different story. Of course, we filmed that this past summer. All right, but we're gonna head back up to Naomi, up to the Jeep, get back up into the noise. So yeah, that'll be it for this video. Just did 2 forts in this video. But there'll be more to come. Like I said, we learned about that new fort too. I gotta try and find where that one's located. But anyway, it's chilly out here today. So I'll say farewell, and as always, thanks for coming along, and I'll see you around.